Minister Bhutto Zardari. Mr. Minister, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start with just the tragedy of the floods and the devastation that you're seeing in Pakistan. I saw the get-together with the Secretary of State earlier today in which you said it was almost biblical proportions here.
It's absolutely biblical proportions. I mean, we've all heard the story of Noah's floods and how it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Well, our monster monsoon in Pakistan started in mid-June and ended at the end of August. And by the time the rains stopped, a 100-kilometer lake formed in the middle of my country, and it's still making its way to the ocean, leaving devastation.
You and I were just looking at satellite images of different towns that are just completely underwater now.
They're completely submerged. And this is a compounding tragedy. So we've got the effects of the catastrophes of the flooding itself. Then we're also looking at a potential health catastrophe with an epidemic of waterborne diseases. On top of that, we're looking at food insecurity with millions of acres of crops destroyed. And to top it all off, we just entered into an agreement with the IMF and all those terms and all those estimates and all those figures are now based on old realities.
The U.S. is offering help. The Associated Press, you mentioned hunger, writes farmers and officials warn that Pakistan could now face serious food shortages at a time when the government is strapped for cash and world food prices are high. That's a big concern of yours?
Absolutely. I mean, look, the scale of this tragedy, just to put it into perspective, is 33 million people, bigger than the population of the state of New York, bigger than the population of New Zealand, Australia, 95% of the population of Canada affected by this devastating climate catastrophe.
The U.S. is offering help. You just met with the Secretary of State. Is it enough in your mind? What is the world doing?
So we're very grateful for the international community, from the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres coming to Pakistan, making the UN effectively all about climate and the Pakistani flood. We're incredibly grateful to the US government, who now I think is a total of $60 million that have been pledged overall. USAID's over there. Samantha Power came and visited. Your congressional delegation came and visited. But no matter what we do, no matter what we manage to gather internationally, given the scale of the tragedy, it is still a drop in the ocean of what is required.
So in the meantime, as that tragedy is unfolding, we are dealing with what's happening in Ukraine and Russia's aggression. There are some people inside the U.S. that wonder why India is buying so much oil from Russia.
I mean, you'd have to ask India. I think that they have their relationships with Russia that have a historical context, but they've also got relations with you here in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you about this. How are the neighbors in Afghanistan now, after the U.S. has left?
So the situation in Afghanistan is difficult for all of us in the region. We all want to see a peaceful, prosperous, stable Afghanistan. It is interest in my security, it is interest in the security of the citizens of your country. Unfortunately, there are certain commitments that have been made with the international community from the Afghan side, whether it's about women's education, whether it's about terrorism in Afghanistan, whether it's about an inclusive government. And I think us, along with the international community, are still waiting for that to be delivered in full by the new interim government in Afghanistan.
And how do you think Pakistan's ability to go after terrorism inside your own country has developed?
So I think that we've made incredible progress on this front. We sort of pride ourselves that despite of what's happened in Afghanistan, as far as our own geography is concerned, as far as our own country is concerned, we went through a period where we would have a terrorist attack every other week. We lost a total of 80,000 of our citizens to terrorism within Pakistan. But it was a result of some decisive action over time, including an initial military operation in South Waziristan, then North Waziristan, and national consensus. We brought that number, like we came back to a position of peace and stability, and people are coming to invest, and life is going back to normal. We have seen since the fall of Kabul, the terrorist incidences, but it's not to the level where we once were. We'll feel a lot more sort of confident about that if we have peace and stability in all our region, which is important not only for our security, but of our neighbors as well.
You're celebrating 75 years of diplomatic relations with the U.S. There was one question. I used to cover the Pentagon, and I covered the Pentagon during the time when they were really hunting for Osama bin Laden. There was a doctor on the ground, Shakil Afridi, who helped the U.S. hunt down bin Laden, but he is still in jail in Pakistan. Why is that?
I don't actually have an update for you on that case.
I didn't want to pin you down, but that is still a concern for some people that went after bin Laden.
Sure. Whatever the legal process is, I'm sure that'll be followed. I unfortunately don't have the latest details for you.
When the relationship between the U.S. and Pakistan, how would you describe it now?
I think that we're re-engaged. And we're sort of post-Afghanistan, we're looking to broaden our relationship. Pakistan-US relationship, as you mentioned, is a 75-year-old relationship, and a lot of that time has been colored by the events in Afghanistan. So after Kabul, I think now we have an opportunity to broaden that scope. That's exactly what we were doing before the floods, and we were talking about business-to-business cooperation, opportunities for American entrepreneurs, Pakistani entrepreneurs in agriculture and health and energy. Now, with the floods, we have to, in Pakistan going forward, work on rehabilitation and reconstruction. And I think that too is an opportunity for our partnership to build climate-resistant infrastructure or destruction, devastation resistant infrastructure and turn a new page on our relationship.
Mr. Minister, we appreciate your time and all the best trying to get over these floods.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure being here.
Thank you. Coming up.